Hey everyone, John Newman here. Thank you for downloading this episode of Card Mensches. Myself and Danny Black of Hobby News Daily would like to remind you this is a live show every other Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. It can be found on most of our social medias. Danny's at Sportsball and Hobby News Daily. I am Sports Card Nation Podcast. And it can be found on our YouTube channels at Hobby News Daily, Sports Card Nation Podcast, at Sportsball, and at Card Mensches. So with that being said, we hope to see you very soon on a Friday night in our very active chat room. Now let's start the show.
For more than 30 years, Robert Edward Auctions has been the nation's premier auction house, specializing in sports memorabilia and trading cards. With significant experience and expertise in all major sport, non-sport, and Americana collectibles, REA has helped clients achieve record-breaking prices for their items and has done so with a reputation for integrity and transparency. By actively partnering with collectors and enthusiasts throughout the entire process, REA has created the hobby's most trusted forum for selling high-quality collectibles. Go to robertedwardauctions.com for more information on how to buy or sell in their next auction.
I'm Danny Black.
And I'm John Newman.
Welcome to Card Mensches. Well, hello. I am Danny Black, and that is John Newman. And I don't know what episode number we're at, but it's been a whole long time. And how are you doing, my friend?
Good. Episode 25. Whenever I hear that intro, I realize how on point we got that synchronized and welcome to Card Mensches. It took a few takes, but come out all right in the end.
I think you're lying. We got it on the first take.
I would like to think we did, but I'm pretty sure we didn't.
What's up, Ruben? Feel the burnout? Yes, I definitely am not feeling the burn. This is not a gym day. That's not what this episode's about. What's going on? The good doctor. How you doing, Steven?
Dr. Mayor, how are you?
Yeah. So we're talking tonight about coping with hobby burnout. So I guess we're sort of assuming that there is hobby burnout, and I guess we want to talk about that a little bit. And then if there is hobby burnout, how to deal with it. Some of you may have noticed that I, have a new razor, and I've learned that my razor guards are different on this razor. That was something new. So we're going to give you tips of things to do when you have hobby burnout. Mine was learning that not to use this guard again.
Yeah, and for me and for you and for other people that do content, right, that can be a double-edged sword, right? It can be hobby burnout on the card collecting side or hobby side and in content creation. And, I don't, it's very rare for me. I'm not saying it's never happened, but I think it's rare for me because of things I sort of do self-care wise, Danny, like preemptively already to avoid sort of falling into that pratfall. So not only I'm going to probably talk about some things kind of to do ahead of time so you don't even get into that hobby burnout territory. And if you do, like, what do you do? Like, what are the, what's the cure for hobby burnout? And it's, it might be different for different people. And anyone listening or watching, by all means, as always, that the chat's interactive. What do you guys do and ladies do that if you get to that point, right? And so maybe a good start is, how do we define hobby burnout? What do you, in your mind, Danny, what do you call hobby burnout?
As a content creator, I think it's like writer's block. Where it just nothing seems fresh. You don't feel like you're contributing good content to excite people. As a collector, when I don't want to play with my cards, that's not fun. I at heart love picking up any one of my cards and just, and looking at it and reading it and, whatever it may be. And if I don't have that urge, and it's just sort of my card room, and I walk by it for a day or two and don't go in. I don't know, kind of bums me out. I feel like I'm missing something.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened so infrequently for me, and I'm not trying to be like bragging about that, but for me, hobby burnout is, and it's probably only happened a time or two, is when I just kind of look at what I'm doing card wise and say, what am I doing here? Or, what's the end game, or what's the long game, and or I'm just not really feeling it right now. But like I said, and I'm being honest, I really don't get hobby burnout, but that's because I really do things, again, preemptively, to really avoid falling in that pothole, where maybe others don't, and then they get into that rut where they're unhappy, right? Or they're not enjoying, and that's probably I might have, the way I described my hobby might not be entirely accurate, but you're just not enjoying it anymore, or at least temporarily or in the moment.
Can I speak for you as your friend?
Yeah.
I think there are times where all of us are more excited and less excited about the content side and the card side. Maybe only for a day, but
Yeah, well, sure.
we all get that burnout a little bit every so often.
I think for me, it's what you just said. I think for me, it's more about what's going on in the grand scheme of the hobby than internally with my own personal collection. I never say, "Oh man, I'm getting rid of all these cards and I'm out." You know what I mean? But I will say, "Man, that's another bad story or another bad look for the hobby. Like, this is terrible,"
All
and
right, I
that will
I
get
might have
me
had a bad
not
day.
depressed, but that will make me like a little bit down on what's going on, like current events.
I love what Mookie says here. It's all seasonal. Summer's over. Baseball's over. The leaves are falling. You need to use your hobby budget on holiday gifts. The hobby will rise again. This too shall pass. Sunrise, sunset. Oh, Mookie, this is one of my favorite comments of all
It's
time.
a great,
Well,
yeah.
I mean,
I want to run through a wall. Like, if this was a football coach at halftime, let's go out there and get him. But it is true,
absolutely.
right? We
Yeah.
we just came from a point in the hobby where you had all four major sports playing at the same time: hockey, football, baseball, and basketball. And now we don't, with baseball season ending. And some people who are diehard baseball collectors or fans, could be depression mode for them, because there is no baseball for another 140 something days until pitchers and catchers report. So I can see that. I mean, I'll ask you, Danny, what you're willing to share, right? I mean, is hobby burnout a thing to you?
100%. And speaking of almost selling everything and throwing it out the window and walking away, I came close to there recently. So yeah, no, burnout for me is not giving up on the hobby for long periods of time, but we all have periods of time where we feel like we want to give up on the hobby. I get frustrated sometimes when I love cards, I think, more than other people do. And I know that sounds selfish, but it frustrates me when I feel like people are trying to take advantage, or do something that's bad for the hobby. And it can get frustrating, and you can feel helpless, when you deal with these giant companies and or all the projects, we deal with content creation. And, sometimes, listen, we all say enough is enough sometimes, and we have other things in our lives, and we turn to those. And I know you go play pickleball, but I have I do.
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
where I think hobby burnout happens, Danny. And I'm not trying to be a jerk when I say this. I think sometimes hobby burnout happens to people when they're consumed by the hobby, when it really just overtakes and becomes the main focus of your life. Listen, I've been in the hobby since 7 years old. I'm about to be 51 here in a couple weeks. And so 44 years probably once or twice I was really, really, really frustrated in those 44 years. But the reason being, I think that I've avoided maybe more so than others is there are weekends. This ain't one of them, but there are weekends where I don't even do anything content related or card related. I don't touch cards. I don't record anything. I don't watch anyone else's stuff. I just kind of take a weekend and do whatever else, and it's not hobby related.
But
During the week, right? I
isn't that,
do other
isn't
things.
isn't that like your own way of kind of like avoiding the burnout that would happen anyway?
That is avoiding the burnout. So I may not even be the best guy to tell you how to get out of hobby burnout because I don't get into it because I just won't allow myself to, right? Like by not being consumed and doing so many other things and with my regular job and extracurricular activities, softball, pickleball, and other stuff I'm forgetting to even mention. You appreciate it when you're not doing it all the time. When you do something too much, it becomes monotonous. It can get old hat, and I think that's where the pratfalls of hobby burnout come in. Same thing with content creation. I had a little content creation burnout in the episode. We're sports card nations in the 250s, but I've said this on the show. Around episode 40s to the 50s of the show, I was really just I didn't know all the shortcuts, and I was taking a lot of time editing, and the show was becoming a very time consuming. And I'm like, I was enjoying it, but I wasn't enjoying it. And what I had to learn there, Danny, is how do I still produce the show at what I perceive at a decent production value, but not spend 4 hours on an episode, right? Or 6 hours on an episode. And I figured that out and kind of got back out of that sort of content creation burnout. And to the point, I've talked about this. I think we've even talked, I remember, it did. Sometimes you don't even know it until someone else points it out. I came down. I'm upstairs. This is where the office is and the studio is. I came down one night and my wife said, "Oh, nice to see you, John," sarcastically. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she gave me the shade, like, "You're doing this podcast and like I hardly see you anymore." And and I'm like, she's right, because I'm just I sometimes it takes someone else to say it for you to finally say, yeah, let's figure this out. And so, I watched a 20-minute tutorial video on how to edit and the editor I was using, which is Audacity. And it saved me like 3 hours, just that video, watching that video and learning stuff I wasn't doing. But going back to the hobby side, I don't want to make this a content creator type thing because, but going back to the hobby side, I just take time away from the hobby. Someone asked me, I do those Q&A. I'll get off my soapbox here in a second. I do those Q&A episodes on Hobby Quick Hits, and someone asked me, "John, how much time do you spend on the hobby combined?" That's doing collecting, handling your cards, shipping orders, doing content creation. And so I kind of did an average, and it averaged out to be about an hour to an hour and a half a day. And so when you do an hour and a half, 90 minutes out of a 24-hour day, I believe that's around 8%. So the hobby's about 8% of my life. So that means there's 92% of other things besides the hobby for me. But I think for other people, Danny, again, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but I think for other people, that number's higher than my 8%. And in some cases, probably very significantly higher, 25, 35, 40%. And I think when you get into those higher percentages, you better love it. If you're doing something 35, 40% of your day, you better love it. Think about that. If you work an 8-hour job, that's 33% of a day, right?
That soap is melting.
Yeah, so you get into the 40%, or you're working 8 hours and coming home and spending 4 or 5 hours with cards or content. That's half your day gone. And if you're not a single person and you're married and you got kids, God bless you. I don't know how you're pulling that feed off, honestly. I've said, if my son's 23 years old. If he was a younger kid, which he was at one point, but I wasn't doing content at that point. I don't know if I could do what I do today if I had a young kid or kids. So it's the balance of your time, right? And I think when you spend too much time, and not just hobby, that's going to be applied to anything, you can get burnt out. Your job can burn you out if you're number one, if you don't enjoy it, and you're working 12 to 14 hours a day at something you don't enjoy. So I think it's the old cliche line, right? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. I just don't get consumed by this. And by not getting consumed by it, I enjoy it. And that's how I think I avoid that hobby burnout, if you will. But we're seeing a lot of people talk about it. You've shared your personal that you had it recently. So it's a real thing. Whether I don't get it or you don't get it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it's something we talk about.
I love you, so I'm going to take your advice. So I'm only going to talk 8% of this show.
I know I went off. That was one of my soapbox rants, but go.
No, I want
ahead.
to catch up on this. I agree with everything you said. You know it. I love you, and you know that I agree with you. So I want to catch up because Mookie says, with everything going on in the world, the hobby remains such a valuable refuge for me. I'm so glad to have chats like this on a Friday night after a tough week. Mensches help avoid the real world burnout. Mookie, I got to tell you, I could have written them and felt the same way. That's why I'm here. I've had a really shitty couple weeks. This has been this is a refuge for us too, and I think that's one of the ways to get over the burnout is to enjoy it. Make sure you're doing what you enjoy. I mean, I'm lucky enough that I look forward to doing this show no matter what is going on, unless the Savannah Bananas are in town, and then that changes everything. But I do. I look forward to doing this show. And to me, that allows me to use the hobby to flip the hobby. And that would be one of my tips. Flip the hobby around and make it a positive. If doing too much content for me is a negative, well, then let me flip it around. Let me make sure that the content I do, I'm enjoying and change my perspective on it. Instead of me having just to do show after show, let me take the next show and make sure that I'm having a freaking blast doing it. And the hobby works in your favor. As a collector, because I don't want to make it all about being content creators, I changed, and you know this, the way I collected over the last year or so in a lot of ways. I started more set collecting or PSA registry collecting, and I've become more of a slave to the registry, but I've enjoyed it, and I've had a blast. And I, after all these years, have learned, that it's okay to change the way you collect. It can be fun.
That's a big one. That's one of my mantras, right? If you're not enjoying the hobby, don't be afraid to pivot, right? Hey, I don't like
that's
this.
That's what I just said it. So it's mine.
Yeah, well, it's everybody's, right?
Okay.
I'm not the first one to say it. I want to put a comment here from Brendan up because this is a great point too. I agree with this. When the hobby is booming, you never hear about burnout, right? Maybe it's a natural correction in perspective. Yeah, the hobby's calmed down, right? Prices have come down. Some people, aren't making hand over fist, like was once the case 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. But it is what it is. I'm a guy that kind of rolls with the time. Listen, I'm doing a show tomorrow as a dealer. I've had to get out my price gun and lower a bunch of stuff. Am I jumping up and down for joy for having to do that? No, but that's part of the territory, right? Just the same, when I can buy something off somebody, now it costs me a lot less as well. So it's a two-way street. So You just got to sort of adapt again to your point too, right? You can come at the hobby with a different angle. Hey, I'm going to collect, soccer. I've been thinking about doing it. I just haven't taken the plunge. Now I'm going to do it, right? Non-sports, whatever the thing is. Hey, I'm going to, start collecting graded cards. It's not something I normally do, but I'm going to do that. Or I'm not going to do graded cards anymore.
I did my first real set collecting in 30 years.
Yeah, and see, I used to be a set guy. Now I'm not. I don't have the room, so you kind of adapt to your environment. When I had more room, I had more sets. I have less room. I sold a lot of my sets, and now I just collect more individual cards. I've narrowed. Here's the other thing: you can still be in the hobby and narrow your collection down, and I think that's something I've done. Like my personal collection is immensely smaller than my show inventory.
I don't need to hear about the size of your collection. Steven says you lower your prices, John. Most of the local shows I've been to still have 2021 prices.
Well, and that's why you see the same cards in the showcase, right? I mean, I don't have to lower my prices, but if you want to sell something,
cards.
Yeah, I mean, am I a museum or am I a dealer when I set up at a show, right? And again, I'm not telling dealers what to do. That's their cards. They can price it any way they want. I'll be the first to tell you. There's some cards that I know are over comps in my cases. Probably a couple. I'm just not really in the rush to sell them, and I just want to have them out there. I don't do that too often, or I try not to. But I mean, I'm a very honest guy. I know that can be the case on a couple of things, and But again, that's the dealers, right? They're traveling to a show. They gotta decide. Like, hey, do I want to sell a bunch of stuff and make this trip worthwhile, or do I want to just show off my cards and have a bunch of people say, "Ooh, that's a cool card." And then walk away. So I to each their own. But you gotta adjust to the market if you're if you're a dealer. It's just part. And it's cyclic. Stuff's gonna go up again too, and it's just timing. Timing can be everything in the hobby when it comes to buying and selling. So But there's another thing, Danny, that I do is again what I said, right? Take time away. Sometimes just hit pause. I'm getting out of hobby. I'm not enjoying it. Well, rather than get out, why don't you just pause? Keep what you got. Go away. Don't do anything hobby wise for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and then see how you feel. Then sometimes that's all you need. It's just sort of the step away.
I'm sorry, Brendan Ryan is cracking me up. I've always taken the hobby at leisure, too much of a good thing and all. And then he says, tempering our passions with the rock one symbol. There is nothing more sexy than tempering our passions, Brendan. I'm with you.
Yeah. I listen every once in a while. I've talked about this too. So someone who listens to the show has probably heard this before, but I get messages sometimes. Hey, John, love the show. That I'm really down on the hobby. It's a point of frustration for me. I'm thinking about getting out. And it would be real easy for me to email back and say, yeah, get out. Let me buy all your cards and be that guy, right? But I obviously don't. I just try to get some of the, my response is usually, why don't you just take a couple weeks away from the hobby, see if you still feel that same way, right? It's the old when someone wants to quit their job, right? I'm quitting. And you hear a boss or supervisor like, go home, think of, take tonight and think about it. If you still feel that way, let me know tomorrow, right? It's that sort of thing, the hobby version of that, right? Instead of one night, they'll take a little more time. And then if you still don't care, or you took 2 weeks off of not doing anything hobby related and you didn't miss it and you still don't like it, then maybe there's your answer, right? It's time to exit stage left. But I think sometimes we don't realize like how consuming the hobby can be. You're handling cards, you're buying cards, you're selling cards, you got to ship, you're listening to content, you're making content maybe, and you're putting in 4, 5, 6 hours a day of doing all that stuff combined, and you're like, holy smokes, it's midnight, and I got to be up at 6 a.m. That's where I think you can get caught in that hobby burnout trap. But it's like anything else too. When you're at a lower threshold too, with prices come settling down and things not being at the crescendo, you're going to get more hobby burnout at those times. Like Brendan Ryan said some comments back. I think that's the nature of the beast. Maybe just spending too much time on in the hobby, and that is a thing. That is a real thing.
Mark Hoyle has dropped in. How are you doing, Mark? Late to the party. What's going on?
Well, yeah, I like a Mookie with the George Costanza. I remember that episode.
I wanted to bring it up because I'm going to give you a chance to laugh at me, and I'll make fun of myself. I was working in baseball when the George Costanza episodes of him working for the Yankees happened to air. You've seen me in person. Let's just say a lot of people called me George Costanza.
Well, maybe for other reasons, but but I get, I don't, but
yeah. So that
I mean, I've kind of gave my sort of tips. Take a break, take a hobby vacation, if you will. I mean, what other than walking away, which is probably the low hanging fruit of how to get out of hobby burnout or avoid it. What else could you? And do you have anything else you can do?
Serenity now. Can I be honest? I rely on my hobby friends. I think it's important to make friends in the hobby just for those reasons. I can talk to you. I can talk to other people, and I can say, listen, I'm just having a tough one, and you'll tell me, okay, whatever. So I'm looking at this Ichiro that I just found online, and all of a sudden I'll get a smile on my face and we're just talking cards again, and I'll get reinvigorated. It's nice.
That's a good point, but it's also good to have friends in the hobby, and obviously we're on that page that you can talk not hobby with too.
Well, they call John. They just call those friends. We're just friends.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Sometimes, when you talk so much hobby that I just want to talk to someone, even if they're in the hobby like me. I don't want to talk to them about hobby stuff. I want to talk to them about life stuff or what's going on in your neck of the woods and that sort of thing. Because you're kind of oversaturated with hobby that you want to sort of break from that. So I think the best hobby friends are the ones you can talk not only hobby, but like, hey, Danny, I don't really want to talk hobby. Let's talk sports or let's talk whatever else.
Totally different. When we don't talk cards, we go way off the reservation and talk sports.
Yeah, but sports is different. I know there's a correlation.
Yeah, there are. I'm kidding.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still non-hobby, right? We're not talking about cardboard or chrome or slabs and that sort of thing. And so sometimes it's okay to just say, hey, man, I love you, but I don't want to talk hobby today. I want to talk, this is on my mind, or this is going on in my life, right? And sometimes it's life itself that can cause hobby burnout, right? You see people maybe get in financial trouble or a big bill comes and they're like, hey, I've got to sell my whole collection, and to pay a big expense that came off. I don't know if that would qualify as hobby burnout per se, but
how about to me, life gets aggravating. I mean, I was dealing with this insurance situation forever. It just wore me down. It was hard to get excited to open up a pack of cards.
Yeah. And I know someone said it in the chat earlier, right? The hobby's supposed to be an outlet, right? To get away from the everyday mundanes of life, right? For my dad, who does have a card collection, but he doesn't actively collect, he's a drummer in 3 bands at 85 years old. That's his outlet, right? And I talked to him. I'm like, Dad, you're 85. You got had some health stuff come up recently. You sure you want to like drum that much? And he's like, John, this is what I enjoy doing. It's my outlet, and if something God happens when I'm doing it, at least I'm going out enjoying what I do, right? And so, I guess if you would, you do whatever that is enjoyment for you. But if it gets to a point where you're doing it too much, and for my dad in this example, playing with 3 bands is not too much. Maybe if he played in a 4th band at 85 years old, that would be the tipping point, right? So sometimes I think it's it's the scales, right? I'm just doing a little too much, and that's where the hobby burnout kind of comes in. So, and that's everyone. That's an individual decision. There's no just because for me it's 60 to 90 minutes a day. A norm or a good point for someone else might be 3 hours, right? For someone else might say an hour and a half, John. I only want to spend 30, 45 minutes a day on so it's up to the individual to decide what their schedule can allow, withhold, and still be enjoyable for them.
Warren says, life definitely gets in the way at times. We're in a difficult time, but when I come down to my man cave card room, I am at peace. And everyone, even wife is starting to get it now. I built her a lady cave. Well, I hope you didn't put your cards in there too, because that might.
She shed. I thought they called them she sheds. I saw a commercial where it was a she shed. But I guess if it's in the house, it's a.
I was about to say if I put my wife outside,
if it's a separate building, it's a she shed.
Yeah, no.
But it's funny now. Warren makes me feel really guilty. Because my wife Sharon said, "Man, you got all your stuff all over the place. Like I don't have a room like that.
You do.
I don't have a room, so I do now. I'm feeling sort of guilty."
Here, let's talk about this for a second. You guys both have real hobby responsibility. It's a little different for you all. We have different hobby responsibility. I mean, we have regular content schedules. We have, listen, I have Hobby News Daily. For me, it's more, I do rely on the hobby more for my finances in life. But the burnout I think is different than what we're talking. The burnout is I don't know. Maybe that is a good point. Like you said, not being able to escape it, and having it be a refuge is what we want it to be. So if it can't be, yeah, that could put me into burnout.
Yeah, I've said with content creation, I think that's what he's talking about with the responsibility. Like I enjoy. Well, no. I probably should be feeling guilty, but I didn't do nothing wrong. It's just that it's not like I took over this room. She said I could.
You're married, John. You did something wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You're right. All right. That better to just
you wake up every morning and just apologize, and that way.
The Dame Den. Ruben came up with. We got names now for the lady man cave. Dame Den. She said. She shed. Try saying that 10 times. Fair. With hobby responsibility, I don't know. I don't feel like and I know people. I don't feel like I know I'm not any better than anyone else. Like with the shows, I enjoy doing the shows. That's how I know when it will be time to hang up the microphone, so to speak. If we do this show and I'm going through the motions or not laughing or having fun, if I'm doing Sports Card Nation and I'm interviewing a guest for an upcoming episode, and I'm going to talk to him at 7 p.m. and it's 3 p.m. and I'm like, I really don't want to do this interview or conversation later. That's when I know, like, you're done. It hasn't happened, knock on glass. So, but I've always said that I don't have nothing to do with a demographics report or downloads that I get. It'll be when I just don't feel like I'm enjoying it or having fun or bringing it. And so if that day ever arrives, then I'll know, it's time to not do that anymore. And even that, maybe even with that, maybe take a break rather than just announcing, hey, this is the last episode of this. Hey, we're just going to take a hiatus. It's like a band, right? Like rock bands, right? And we're not breaking up. We're just taking a hiatus. We're like hate each other right now. So we're going to take a hiatus. And maybe after a year of that, we'll like each other again and we'll go on the road and tour again. Well, you can do that, hobby-wise. You can do that content-wise as well, too. And sometimes that's what you need is a break. Sometimes it's, hey, I don't need to get rid of all my stuff and get out of the hobby. I just need to take a month and not even think about the hobby or content creation or whatever, insert whatever activity in there. And sometimes that break is all you need. And for others, I've had someone tell me like I don't like the hobby anymore. I'm out. Like I've had someone say, I heard your diatribe on taking a break. I'm not even going to do that because I know it won't make a difference. So I'm getting out. I guess you got to know yourself, but there's a lot of different things you can do even besides the break. Collect a different way. Sell a portion. Sometimes I think I don't want to say our collections get stale, but when you see kind of your PC and maybe you're seeing the same things and it doesn't move your meter in the same way, well, you know what? If that happens to you, sell some of that stuff that doesn't move your meter anymore, and buy stuff that's on your list that will, replenish that PC or refreshen the
John,
PC, if you will.
John, you're speaking from years of experience. You had a card shop. You without a doubt, I know, had burnout at a time in your life.
Well, I said with the card store, I had the card store when in the 90s when eBay came along. And I had the card store. I was 24 years old when I was 22 when I started the card store. But you're 22 and your friends are asking you, hey, we're going here. Hey, we're doing this road trip. You in, Newman? And I'm have to keep telling them like, no, I got to open the store. I can't make that trip. I want to, but I can't. And eBay kind of came along and you post, you list some stuff on eBay and you're getting, notifications like, hey, I'm selling cards at 3 a.m. And you're like, I can still enjoy the hobby and do things what a young 20-something-year-old guy wants to do. And so that's, I did the card store from 92 to 97. And then it was time to, I don't want to say I had burnout from the card store. That's too strong. But there was definitely like, it was time for me to go in a different direction. So if you want to call it a mild case of burnout, I wouldn't argue with that, but it was just time to do traveling. I did some shows, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Massachusetts, Connecticut. And I kind of just didn't have to be in a card store every day at a certain time and kind of locked in there, and I wouldn't trade that experience. I'm not sorry I had a card store from 92, 97. But when I left in 97, left the store, not the hobby, it was time for me to go because I think had I not left and just kind of played the string out, that's where I think that the burnout would have definitely really set in. And I might have just got so mad or frustrated. Maybe I would have sold all my cards, not done shows and just, exit stage left. So sometimes just knowing when to say when is huge. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't.
Say when, John.
When, John?
I think that a couple of people have made the comment that burnout is tied to the quality of the market, whether prices are up, sales are up, and the market's hot, and that creates enthusiasm. And then when prices go down or the market's slower, that you get the burnout or whatever that feeling and emotion is. And I think there can be some truth to that. I think nobody likes losing money, and you don't have to be a flipper to not want to lose money. I'm a collector. I've got plenty of things back there that are personal collections. I still don't want to see them go down by 80%. It doesn't mean I'm selling them, but I don't want to see my
buy
house
more. Buy more or buy stuff if you're a seller or reseller, you don't even
Well,
have to be a flipper. Buy stuff that you think like, yeah, it's down now, but it's going to get off the mat. It's going to get off the mat eventually.
I don't want to mention everything, but you know what I've done in the last couple of months. I think I've taken advantage of a soft market, and I agree with you there. But that's kept me going, so I don't burn out in a slow market. I've almost had to do that to keep and I love this, Mark. We were talking
This
about
is a great comment. I'm glad you put it up from Mark.
Burnout here, Mark says. Some nights I'm up in my room for an hour or two. Other times I'm not up there for a couple days.
That's me. There's sometimes I don't, we almost talk, not every day, but almost like this, where I'm texting is one thing, but I'm talking, but there's sometimes I just don't get up here for whatever reason. I just crash. Like sometimes I'll just crash at 8, 9 o'clock and I'm tired. I'm like, I'm going to bed. So what Mark said is he read my mind, because there's just times I just don't do, and that's where that hour and a half I came up with figures into play. So if I didn't spend any time, let's say today, but I spend 3 hours tomorrow, on average, there's the hour and a half. So there are days where that number's 0, and there are other days where that number's 3 or 4, and that's where that 90 minutes a day average comes in. And there's nothing wrong to me. There's nothing wrong with that, right? When you have a family, and this I'll be strong about, right? Your family has got to come first. I talked about this on Sports Card Nation. I had a dealer friend of mine that was just so consumed with the hobby and doing shows every weekend. And I remember he came. We used to set up together at these shows that we did. And he would do a lot more shows than I would, which is where the problem. And I remember we were set up next to each other. We were talking. I don't even think the doors are open. He goes, me and my wife really, had it out the other day. She's saying I'm doing too many shows. I'm on the road too much. I'm not home. I got small kids, but I love this stuff. And he wanted me to like take his side and basically say, your wife's wrong. You keep doing shows and do what you enjoy. And I didn't tell him that. I don't think he necessarily liked that, but I was very honest. Like, you got to, decide what your marriage, being a dad with your kids, kind of step back and listen to what your wife might be saying. I don't think he liked it. He didn't change what he's doing. And a couple months later, we're set up at another show, and he's like, I got served papers and this sucks. What do you say? What could I say? Right? Like, oh man, that stinks. I'm sorry. But I've seen being consumed by something cause divorce.
Do you have any more pick me up stories there?
Here's another one. I'll make it quicker. I played a lot of competitive. In my younger days, I played even more competitive softball, but I had a teammate, same thing. It was just softball instead of hobby. He was traveling, doing tournaments and playing 4 nights a week in regular leagues.
That stuff.
Traveling on weekends. Yeah. And I remember I was at a tournament with him, and he's like, yeah, I'm missing my daughter's dance recital. I'm missing my son's Little League game. And I just remember saying to myself, like, this is a recipe for disaster. And sure enough, his wife, they got divorced, and he's paying, child support and up to yin yang. So anything can be. And I think hobby burnout sometimes comes from, again, being consumed, but that can happen whether it's playing a sport or darts or softball or being a dealer and you're just away from home to a point where your wife or spouse says it's too much. I'm here on my own, drowning while you're kind of having fun and I'm picking up the slack, right? Those are real scenarios. I've seen them, I've heard them firsthand. So you have to know when to say when, I guess. And sometimes I think that's even maybe sooner than you want to, or maybe you have to spend less time than you even want to, but it's just healthier for all involved, right? I had another I had a friend of mine whose son played video games like 15 hours a day, and he was venting to me, hey, John, there's Jordan, that's my son. Does he play 15 hours a day? I'm like, he plays a couple hours a day on his PlayStation. He goes, I can't get my son he's like addicted, and it can cause problems. So, it's I think the time you spend is what causes burnout. So if you're feeling it, lower that time spent, and then kind of reevaluate where you are.
Repeat that one more time. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Well, hopefully everyone else is, because I'm not.
I'm kidding.
But I don't know. And again, that whatever that is, it could be different things for different people, right? So I'm blessed with a wife who's supportive, and but I've cut down on. I don't play as much softball as the younger version of me did. I don't do as much traveling show wise as the younger version of me did. That's more my decision than my wife even saying like, hey, knock it off. That's more me. Like,
Well,
I don't want to be at a show every weekend. Some of my funnest weekends are where I don't even have plans, Danny. I've had this conversation with you where I can just like do whatever, stay home and watch football, or have no itineraries, whatever.
read this comment. I saved it for you because I think that you and I both will both like this.
Hey guys, spent the evening with my 3-year-old granddaughter. Great way to avoid hobby burnout. Awesome from Stooks, right? You can travel without being hobby. I always get this. Hey John, I'm in the hobby. I know you're in Syracuse. I'm traveling to Syracuse. What card store should I check out, right? Or I'm going, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying otherwise, but when I go on vacation, I'm not really, I probably don't go on vacation often enough, and now that I think about it. But when I do, I honestly not thinking about card stores or checking out a card store. It's not that high on my list. I'm on vacation. I'm more of a foodie. What restaurant are we going to go to on Friday? Where are we eating on Saturday? That sort of thing, but that's me. And that's just how I compartmentalize, my hobby, and really the vacation is sort of my vacation, not just away from the hobby, but your job and every day.
You compartmentalize much better than most people. You're just not aware of it.
I've gotten better, but here's the thing:
most people don't do it as well.
Listen, I'll confess, I've gotten better at it in the older I've gotten. The younger version of me wasn't as good at it.
No wonder you're so good at it.
Well, you get older and you have to cut down on some things, right? It's like everything, right?
Yeah,
everything in moderation.
At your age,
everything from food, salt, sugar, soda, coffee, hobby, right? Everything in moderation.
I love this comment because we talked about it before. Yep. Got bored with cards. Now I'm collecting tickets. Mix it up.
Pivot. And you can always, you want to come back to cards again. That door, it's closed now, but you can reopen it if you so choose, and you can open a new door as you did with getting into tickets, which I did hobby quick hits on that. I think that market is still got a lot of ceiling left in it. So but you got to know yourself and your limits and where that point of burnout is, and sort of like making sure you don't kind of cross that line like Moonlight Graham in Field of Dreams, right? Where it gets you can't go back, or going back is not fun. And so, I've gotten better at it. Like you said, Dana, I've gotten better at it. I'm going to be 51 here shortly. I've gotten better at it in my older age than 20 or 30-year-old version of me was. I think I'm better at it. I think what helped me, and I don't wish, I'm sorry, but those stories I shared with my softball buddy who got divorced because he's playing so much softball, or my dealer acquaintance that was doing way too many shows and his wife finally had enough. And I think those experiences, even though they weren't direct but indirect. Those experiences, I took lessons from them, like, note to self, right? The old note to self, like, be careful here, the pratfalls. And I think, unfortunately, at someone else's expense, I learned sort of what not to do. My sister has 4 kids. She's older than me by 13 years, so they're all grown up now. So I was a young uncle. I knew, seeing my sister with 4 kids, I said at an early age, I don't know if I'm ever having kids, but I know this: I'm not having 4. That's why I have one son.
What did she live in a town
23.
without CVS?
Huh?
She live in a
No,
town
I
without
just
a
I
pharmacy?
just saw, like, I saw the sack, and she's a great mom. I'm not, but it was tough, right? And I said, man, I don't want to have 4 kids. I can tell that's not sort of the lifestyle I want to sort of live. But some people, kids are great. Listen, I won't argue that point, but sometimes you see how other people, their experiences, and it kind of shapes how your approach, right? And so, from that dealer who got divorced, my softball buddy who got divorced, my sister having 4 kids, and me being a young uncle, those experiences kind of like lay out, sort of, at least in my mind, like what I do or don't want to do. And I'm sure other people, it's the same way.
Brendan Ryan says, even in the post-apocalyptic movie, The Book of Eli, baseball cards had trade value.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, fantastic. Ruben says, kids are great, especially when they go back to their parents. Ruben, clarify that you mean you're a grandparent. You're just not picking up kids randomly.
The candy van, free candy. The white van with the black spray paint, free candy.
Yeah.
I hope Ruben's not driving that.
Ruben, the kids are a blessing. I have 3. Thank goodness they're all asleep right now.
Yeah, and listen. When I told that story with my sister, I'm not trying. It wasn't in a negative text. I just realized as.
Are you kidding? I couldn't do 4. I think she's freaking nuts, and I don't know her.
Yeah, I became an uncle. I was 11 years old, so there was times I'm like, I don't want any kids if this was what it's going to be like. Listen. I had to babysit my nieces and nephews a lot as a younger uncle, so I had my hands full.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it's those experiences, right, that shape who we are and decisions we make. But even without them, right, we have to decide for ourselves what's, another topic, just kind of winding down here, Danny, too. I know we talked about this off the air. We're seeing a lot more shows now, right? I'm doing a show tomorrow in Watertown, New York. It's the 3rd one ever there, right? It's a brand new show, small show. I'm usually a bigger show guy, so this will be a different setting for me. We're seeing a lot of new shows and locations that never had them. We're seeing you did a show in Pittsburgh where there was another show literally across the street at the same time.
I've never seen that one before.
Yeah, so we're seeing all these shows pop up, and now the market is corrected. Sometimes I feel weird even saying the down market. I think the market has come down and corrected itself, but yet we have more shows. We may get to a point, maybe we're there already. I'd be interested to see what the chat room, what people watching or listening think. You think maybe we have too many shows? Is it oversaturation of shows? And that could be playing into burnout as well.
I don't know about you. I've also had card shops open up in my area recently. I've had card shops expand and move into larger locations. So I wonder if these weren't plans that were made, in the last year or two. And, now everybody's kind of got to execute their plan, even though the market's not as strong. And it seems a little awkward, like you said, in this environment to have this much. And this blows me away. Look at we had 5 shows in 2 weeks in the Minneapolis area. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a
lot. I don't know.
John, it's the junk show era.
Yeah, Steven just coined a new, we got the junk wax era, we got the the junk slab era. Now we got the junk show era. If you use that, make sure you give Dr. Mayer the credit. I don't know if he stole it from someone else, but that's the first I've heard that. So I'm going to give him the credit there. Yes, it is actually the show that I'm doing is near the Salmon Run Mall, and we're hoping veterans get in free at this show. So hopefully we'll have some there to enjoy the hobby and not have burnout. Speaking of that, it is Veterans Day, so thank you to all who have served in the past or are currently serving as well. We wouldn't get to enjoy the freedoms of the hobby without that, and so shout out to all those who served or are currently serving. And here's the other thing with going back to Stoops' comment about five shows in 2 weeks.
I'm gonna step in real quick because we're not gonna have a show in 2 weeks if I don't get this message in.
Experience, quality, consistency, and the quickest turnaround times in the grading industry. We are proud to partner with SGC Grading. Check them out at www.gosgc.com.
And I'd like to add that getting cards graded is a great way to break a cycle. If you need to mix it up a little bit, take some cards and get them graded if you haven't done it, and get them back. It'll get your juices flowing.
It's like opening a pack, right? It's the funnest thing in the hobby, except when you look at your bank account and no grading. I'm biased, but yeah. We gotta hire Mookie. I don't know what we could pay him, but we gotta hire Mookie. But going back to Stuke's comment, 5 shows in the same area in 2 weeks, right? How is that not burnt? Because I venture a guess without being there, that if you have 5 shows in the same general area in 2 weeks, what are you gonna have most likely? You're gonna have a lot of the same dealers set up, right? If I was doing the Syracuse show every week instead of every 2 to 3 months like it is, the consumers coming in would have burnout from seeing my ugly mug and the other dealers' ugly mugs, the same ones, that frequently, right? And it is. I think we're at that point. We're at that point where it's a legitimate discussion to have. Is there too many shows? It's one of the reasons when, I don't know how your take on it, but every once in a while we hear that rumor, right? Let's do 2 nationals a year, one in Chicago and one on each coast in alternating years. I don't want 2 nationals. One of the beautiful things about the national is it's like Super Bowl week. You get 1 Super Bowl a year, right? I don't want 2 Super Bowls. I don't want a first half Super Bowl to say. So that, speaking of oversaturation, and we haven't had 2 national. I just know it's been a rumor that's come up here and there. But I think if the Nationals went to two nationals a year, I think it takes the bloom off that rose and the mystique of that surrounds that show. It takes that away a little bit. So I hope they don't do that. Even if it's in Chicago every year, whatever they decide to do eventually, I think 1 national is good. But again, like Stuke's point, 5 shows in 2 weeks in a general area, like, it's just too much, right? It's too much. And in my opinion, someone else would be like, no, I did all 5 of the shows and did very well. If there would have been a 6th show, I would have signed up for that. So, 1 national. I hope the national ever goes to 2 shows. I had Ray Schulte on the show. He pinned that it's probably not going to be the case, but sometimes that's what happens, right? So things are good, and then we want to do them too much, and that's where that oversaturation occurs. This is your question. You're the Strongsville guy.
I've gone to the last 3 or 4, whatever it's been. I don't know yet is the short answer. Luckily for me, I don't need to make that decision this far out.
Well, if you leave Baltimore and come through Syracuse on your way to Strongsville, pick me up and I'll chip in for gas and then I'll go.
As Yogi Berra said, when they told him he was, lost when he was driving. He said, "Yep, but we're making good time."
No one. My favorite Yogi line is, "No one ever goes there anymore. It's too busy." That's my favorite.
Well, if you have not seen the Yogi Berra documentary that's out now, it's worth watching. It's out, I think, on Netflix and Amazon Prime. I don't know if anybody in the comments has seen the Yogi Berra piece. John, it was great. I know we're in overtime.
I gotta watch it. I know a lot of Yogi from being a New Yorker and that sort of thing, but I definitely haven't seen the.
I have a whole new respect. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see. It'll be something I'll find and watch and that. So he was classic. Just and listen, he managed the Mets too. Not very well, but he did manage the Mets.
Well, they talk about that.
Yeah, look, man, I'm late to the party here.
It ain't over. Well, it's funny. So if you guys are in the comments, see if you agree with this. My son watches it and goes, Yogi Berra is the Bill Russell of baseball with all the rings.
Yeah.
And he's
probably a guy that doesn't get, we're going in a different tangent. I think he's a guy that probably doesn't get enough credit for the career he had.
He doesn't. You got to watch this documentary. Ruben says it's on Amazon.
I have that. That's all right. Maybe Sunday. I can't do it tomorrow. I'll be like I said, I'll be out of town, but at a show. But I think Sunday I got 2 hours? I think I got 2 hours planned on Sunday.
And on a separate note, 80 for Brady with the four ladies was fantastic.
I saw that movie. I'm not going to lie about it. My wife.
That was a good movie.
I don't want to say my wife made me watch it, but she requested, "You want to watch it?" We got like a free, and she had already seen it in the theaters with like some of her friends, and she goes, "John, I think you're going to like this. I know it's not normally a movie you'd watch," and I'll admit it was better than I thought it was going to. And no, I did not cry. Just for the record, I did not cry at 80 for Brady. I would say I did if I did.
I cried, but Mookie says, "Good call, son of Danny. Bill is twice Yogi's height, but otherwise apt." Yes. Very funny. All right, John, we are past our bedtime here. Anything else you want to add? We've done an hour 5, and I feel like I've done 5 of that. So
and I'll just say this. Since the main topic of the show was hobby burnout. If you ever get to that point, my door is always open. My phone numbers. I'm glad to talk someone off the ledge per se. And I've gotten those messages, right? I've never tell people like get out of the hobby. I see a lot of people say, you don't enjoy the hobby, you're not having fun, get out. I don't like to tell people to get out unless they've tried everything and they're just that unhappy. Then I would say that. But I always try to give pointers or just take a break, or sometimes just talking about maybe your hobby burnout might get you past over that hump, if you will. So my door is always open for anything, but with stuff like that. And I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I just have done things to sort of avoid that pratfall. And, sometimes just talk, right? Sometimes getting stuff off your chest is a weight in itself. And sometimes that's what all you might need in certain situations. So my door is always open for things, especially like that. And, sometimes it's just taking a break, hitting pause, right? And then just hitting play again when you're ready to come back. And I mean, I wasn't for burnout, but there was 4 years when my son was very young that I hit pause. I just kind of, my stuff was in the closet. I didn't buy any new cards. I didn't sell any cards. And then I just kind of came back and opened it back up again. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And that was a 4-year break. So that's why when I do the math and someone says, "How long have you been in the hobby?" I have to minus those 4 years. I actually didn't do anything. So
Mark with the last comment tonight says, "I could go to a show every weekend in the Boston area. I go to one probably every 3 months. I still see the same stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the dilemma, right? You're seeing the same stuff in the show. One thing I try to do, especially if I have some lower sales or I didn't move a lot of individual cards, I'll just put new stuff out at the same location. Let's say if I was there the previous month, I'll try to put some new stuff out, just to refresh it, right? I think some dealers do that or have that mindset. Some others probably just, I always get a kick out of the dealer who has like one showcase and like it holds 30 cards and they have 10 cards in there. I couldn't do that if I tried. I actually think it would be, just think how easy that is, right? And you load your card up, you load your car up, you throw one showcase in one box with 10 cards.
The only thing funnier is if you made it 10 base cards and top loaders.
Yeah, I know. Usually when you see that set up, they're all 4-figure or higher cards. Yeah. So all you got to do is sell one of those things and your show is kind of made. But, I just, I'm 2 tables and that's still, I could fill up more. That's what I choose to rock with is.
Well, I just want to piggyback real quick on what you said before about, your door is always open. You're always willing to talk to people. That I just want to, second that and echo that sentiment. If anybody ever wants to talk, if anybody ever, is thinking about it, call John.
Well, I'll make it a conference call and I'll patch you in. That's what you get.
I'm not any help. I'm not going to do anything.
And I'm not saying I'm an expert. That's not what I meant by that. But sometimes, it's like any problem, right? If you kind of keep it internal, it sort of stews and can get the best of you, right? Sometimes just getting it off your chest, whatever it may be, is all you need sometimes. Again, every scenario, every person is different. But for some folks, they just need to really discuss it, get sort of an outside, thought process or opinion. And then they feel better or sets them in a better place. And so if I can help in that regard, again, I'm not a clinical psychologist or I never call myself an expert because I'm not, but I've just been doing this a while and experienced, I guess, I'm experienced, but not an expert. And my door's always open, not just for this, but just in general. That's just sort of my nature. It's kind of what I do, even in my regular job with being a teaching assistant in the special education department, right? You try to help people and sometimes you're better at it. Some days you're better at it than other ones, but I always try when I can.
Well, on that note, John, you got a beverage next to you?
Yeah, it's not Coke though. It's black cherry soda.
Here,
black
cheers.
Cherry.
Cheers. And as they say, l'chaim to life. Say goodnight, John.
Good night, John.